Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and welcome back to Connections. We are on episode 10, and I'm joined today by our dear friend Sheikh Idris. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Idris.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Thanks for joining us today again.
You're most welcome.
Okay, so today we thought we would do a question and answer. So we have a bunch of questions that were sent in to us, and people have been sending in to us for some time. And we thought maybe we'd take one that really compelled us and explore it a little bit further in the way that it relates to these themes that we're talking about in relation to spirituality, trauma work, agency, self-development, and so forth. So today's question we got here was a question on what is the Islamic take on manifestation? Manifestation, for those that may not know, is this new age idea that one can, by just focusing on something, maybe repeating it to themselves or outwardly, manifest it in the world, have something that comes to them, or this type of abundance. They use the language of abundance, this new age terms. And for those that may be more familiar with this, called The Secret. There's a whole book and series of movie documentaries, all this stuff about it. So what is the Islamic take on manifestation? And I'll just pose that right to you, Sheikh Idris.
So yeah, I mean, I've been asked this question quite a lot recently. I was quite surprised when this, as you were saying, it's like you'll find this sort of these philosophies, or I don't know what you want to call them, in the personal growth world. And when I remember when I was really soul searching, when I hit my anxiety when I was around 37, and doing a bit of soul searching and trying to find out some solutions. My anxiety affected the way how hard I was on myself, and I was just saying, and I just need to do more ibadah and more worship, and so I was hard on myself, and it was affecting me in my relationship with my loved ones. And I realized, my God, I've got to have a different approach. So I got involved in the personal growth world, which is interesting. The first place I started was, I'm losing my memory. So I went on a course. There's a personal, like this course on memory. And so I went on that, and he started talking about other things to help, like support you in improving your memory. And I got into brainwave technology. So I got into that, and then before you know it, you're just like you're immersed in all these different personal growth teachers.
I think I remember when you were into the binaural stuff.
Yeah, I still use it, to be honest.
Yeah,
because it's so simple. It's like lazy meditation. You just lie back and listen to like these binaural beats, these different beat. What is it? These different brainwave frequencies coming at your brain. So that's probably the only thing. And I did benefit hugely from the personal growth world, to be honest. I noticed a lot in the personal growth world. They were using hypnotism and NLP. Those were the two like main therapeutic modalities that they were using. But one thing that was talked about was about, I never heard it phrased as manifestation. I heard it phrased as a law of attraction. So when when people have been asking about manifestation, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So it seems like back then, I think they were talking more the law of attraction. I think they've reframed it or rephrased it. I don't know. And I remember when I was doing a course, and it was basically based around NLP techniques, but they were also using affirmations, and they were almost getting you to set your mind on something, and then your brain works to achieve that. So there's a lot of that going on. And I could never commit to that sort of stuff. I found it incredibly stressful, setting on like almost this sense of willpower, willing something. And I think first and foremost, when we talk about it, I mean, most scholars, I know most people that have been to scholars and asked about this, they will just tell them straight out, this is haram. The reason being it haram is because it takes Allah out of the picture to some degree. But they might say it's the universe, like the universe starts to comply towards your the intention you set out on. But the problematic with that, even if we say that the universe is Allah, let's say that's the ultimate power, whatever you want to call it, it's as if that power's complying to what you want,
Yeah.
which is incredibly problematic.
Of course.
And I remember, I think Gabor Mate had a quote there. He said, magical thinking, because this is magical thinking. It's you setting your mind on something and believing that you have some ability to have an impact on the world on a very broad spectrum. Of course, we have an impact on the world in terms of the day-to-day we're dealing and interacting, but almost as if you are the cause of things coming in. He says this is magical thinking is a childlike state. And it is a part, like Ken Wilber speaks about this in his in his stages of development. The child at one stage, they believe they're responsible for everything and they can enact anything. They almost, and so it's a developmental stage, and it's a narcissistic stage. And when I say narcissistic,
Egotistic,
egotistic, whatever you want to say, it's a stage. And that's what I think is really important when we look at narcissism, because narcissism isn't inherently bad. It's just it should have been outgrown. And,
exactly.
And I think that's really important. That I've been reflecting on that a lot. Like a lot of these pathologies, or a lot of these dysfunction or disorder, or whatever you want to call it, they're not that they're disorders. It's just they should have been left behind many years ago, and the person in certain areas of their personality has been stunted. And that's so beautiful because the Quranic verse phrases it just like that. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. The one reaps his reward and is successful, who enables it to almost grow out of that stage. وَقَدْ خَابَ. And the one that's lost and failed is the one dassaha, and dasha means to stomp on something. So it's literal stunting.
Suppressing.
So the way we look at it, and I don't know if it's the way in Naam, I think it is that we look at these as like, not like dysfunctions. They're just they were stages that have been stunted.
Exactly.
And they haven't. Is that how they see it in Naam?
Yeah, I mean they talk about it in terms of the life force, and the life force has this type of evolution, if you will, and there's certain faculties and certain types of capacities that come online at certain stages. So the first stage is prenatal to 6 months, and then the second stage is from 6 months to 2 years, and so forth. And so there's a type of growing, again, up and out, as and when the trauma happens, there's a type of fragmentation that happens. And so I think of it as like you eject from that life force process, and it just kind of stalls and becomes arrested at that point. And then all these strategies form around it, and you can kind of move in the world with the strategies, but actually emotionally, the level of the life force, the level of the nafs, it's just right there. And you can be 50, 60 years old, leader of the free world, and you're still at that level.
Emotionally. Yeah. I mean, that's really important. That I've been reflecting on that a lot more about this, because if you think about it, our way of perceiving the world and ourselves at a very young age is not cognitive, it's emotional. That is a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old is very much sensing themselves and the world through emotions. And if that gets almost ruptured, let's look at it in that way, ruptured or stunted, so there's some sort of stunting happening there, or rupture happening in the psyche there. It shows up emotionally, and it will show up emotionally when we grow up. So like Gabor Mate says in Scattered Minds, if you're screaming and shouting at the person to just cut you up on the drive on the highway, that's calling back to something very primal in yourself. Now, not that the person's triggered you, but there's a way of like saying, God, that guy was, that was a bit out of order, to I'm going to kill you, you're this and you're
when
that.
You're off the street.
Yeah, you're seething and you can't almost calm yourself down. This is speaking to something very primal in you that has not been addressed. And that's really important. People understand that the emotions have an intelligence, and if they often are stunted or ruptured, then we can't address it cognitively. People try to they're solution focused. It won't work, because solution focus is cognitive, and it's an adult way of dealing with something that's very vulnerable. and it's almost you will show up as a child, a young child, in that very vulnerable state when we're dealing with these things, and that can be shown up in a volatile sense, or even harder. The one I struggle with myself is I'm more disassociative, and I will actually think I'm fine. That was such a struggle for me when I was going through my own process, because I was like, I'm fine. All these people are crazy around me. You know, all these other people on the course. So I'm like, thank God I'm not they're not my therapist. And I thought I was absolutely fine. But a lot of that actually being fine is in reality you actually masking,
numbing or something.
but it's really disorientating, because that's been your coping mechanism. So to even question that is so disorientating.
Totally.
And like that, even to go into the realm of thoughts and emotions is too disorientating sometimes, even by yourself, because you can second guess yourself. So that's the power of somatics, because I say, if your mind's drifting off, or your body's tensing, or you're holding your breath, you are defending, you're coping with something, you're bracing and not wanting to deal with something. So that I can bring some sanity back there, because I can't deny that my body's responding. And so that I have to admit there's something that's, I'm not engaging with this thing on a physiological level. I am dealing with this in an evasive way, that's undeniable. And so that, and remember, sensations are sensorimotory, and that's the first experience we have in the world. We're not even emotions at the very early age, we're in sensorimotory. So for us to really deal with things, we've got to go back, and we've got to just start from the basics. So bringing this into the context of this, what we're talking about is, I believe, manifest this desire for to almost believe this manifestation that I can bring about a change, is because I believe people have been robbed of their autonomy. So people who haven't experienced agency or success in what they deem to be success in their life, it's very reassuring to think that if I set my mind on something, I can bring it about. And the first stage is true, I believe, is that we are required to set an intention towards something. And that's an internal processing. That's me in the picture. I want something, I'm going to set my mind to it. The second piece is missing in manifestation, is then how does the reality around you align to that? Is it in congruence with it? Is it aligning with it? Or is it in opposition? This is the relational piece now. The other, which is fundamentally, if we broaden it, it's being in relationship to Allah. So we set an intention, but Allah's going to send us feedback. Is this what he wants? So I have a real issue. Even I personally have been on courses, and they say, what do you want to get from this course? And I understand it's justified. So you're setting a motivation, but sometimes I'm reluctant, because I say, yes, I could set a intention, but that's in cognition, and my cognition is limited. I want to actually see what emerges on this course, to see, because I don't know. And sometimes that's a get out for me, not wanting to I think it's sometimes a fear-based approach, because I don't want to commit to an intention that I might not be able to fulfill. That's a possibility. But at the same time, we have to allow for an emergence to happen. So we set an intention, and then we wait for emergence. What emerges from that, so we can realign our intention. And I really am very fearful of so many Muslims, and I see it in Muslim organizations. I'm not going to name names, but there was a course on prayer. And they were saying in this, set your mind on something, like you want to get married or have a child, and basically book the hall before you've even found the spouse, your potential spouse. Get the room painted and ready before the child comes in, so you can almost bring it in. I mean, that's incredibly problematic for me. Even if let's step aside from the theology, psychologically, how are you going to deal with that if that doesn't happen?
True. So, I mean, in some way, I'm sorry to interrupt, but in some way, it's like, I know people that may do that, and they'll say, I have a firm conviction, I have husn dhann in my Lord. I have a good opinion of my Lord, and I trust that because he's put this desire in me, it's because he wants to give it to me. And so I'm going to just follow through and just anticipate and assume that it's done or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe that's one of the motivations. But
Yeah.
like you said, it's like if there's a type of egocentrism to that, because it's like the whole focus of will emanated from you, and it's not respectful in some way of Allah Ta'ala's infinite wisdom, infinite knowledge, infinite power. Maybe the desire, is there, but you don't get it in the form that you anticipated. But the outcome of your agency, kind of the implication of that will and the agency, comes in a different way later, or some other way that you didn't expect. It will be better for sure, as we believe theologically, but not in that rigid way. How many people do you know, and I know, that wanted to get married and they threw everything into this person, all their hopes and dreams and everything, and it was their first relationship? Maybe they have no idea. They're like 22, 23, out of college. They meet somebody, they're taken by them. This is my, Prince Charming or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Allah Ta'ala has manifested my greatest hopes here. Thank you, Ya Allah. And then Allah, for whatever reason, doesn't work out. Yeah. And now it's like they get crushed.
Yeah, they feel betrayed almost by God.
Total betrayed. Ya Allah, why? I mean, I have somebody recently who lost her sister.
This for you, my sincerity, and they yeah.
I have somebody recently lost her sister, lost her mom, and lost her dad in the same year. And she's grappling with it, and she says, it's like, it's there and it's real. And a part of her process is recognizing, wow, like I have this sense of, I don't want to say entitlement, but I have this assumption that if I ask you for something, it's going to come in this certain way, and part of her history is not having the capacity to even ask or name what she wanted. So it's like this compensation, but now it's not out of balance. And, it's like, I think within the same vein of this, Allah, I'm asking you, like I'm making dua, like.
And I think that's beautiful that she's able to, at that stage, for like you said, you've contextualized it. You said she wasn't able to ask, she's moved to asking, and naturally it will come out in a very sort of, intense way. And now we say, look, that's wonderful that you're able to ask. That it's got to move to the next stage now.
Exactly.
Almost like a maturer way of asking. Is that when I ask, and this is going to show up in relationships, is that like I've asked and I really want it now, but can you actually, because to ask is to be vulnerable, isn't it? So can I ask and be vulnerable, but also protect myself if it doesn't work out, and almost give myself that reassurance rather than just giving my all over. And it's that ability in relationships. We're not just talking about Allah. Is that I open myself and be genuine and be vulnerable, but I also know when to step aside and be a bit more formal with people. But I'm at the initial stage. I'm willing to be open and explore, but I know I have the capability to draw back if this is not healthy for me. And a lot of that shows up, in people's, even the way they display in their rituals. It's that almost that they've got to have it or else, and it's that fear if it doesn't manifest in the way they expected. And I do believe they project on, like, look at, I often, when I'm with clients, is when they've got trouble with God in their relationship, there, that lack of trust to almost let go. Well, was that the case in relationships of authority going back? And generally you'll see that this is projection. You're projecting onto God the way you perceived authority.
Absolutely.
With your, with people in your past, and God is not a person. It's not that individual that you had hope in, and they broke you, or they betrayed you. That's not the same, and you really have to work through those things, because it's the same stuff showing up. Absolutely.
I have yet to meet anybody who had that capacity to be vulnerable enough to share with me that they have this thing with Allah. Though, it's not like, just for people that are listening, I'm sure you're aware of this, but, when it's like that, it's not easy for them to name it, and it frightens them, and it's overwhelming. But in being real, like, I actually feel that, and I don't want that. I want to be trusting. I want to be receptive of Allah's good, and knowing Allah Ta'ala as Arhamur Rahimin, the most merciful of the merciful. But there's a part of them that's knotted when it's out of the theological space, like in the felt sense. Like, I mean, another example, just recently, I have somebody who wants to have a baby, and she's terrified. What if the baby, what if she miscarries it? What if it comes out unhealthy? What if it changes her life utterly and just puts her into disarray and disorganization that she can never recover from? What if? And there's a type of distrust that she explained it with God. And, when that's there, going back to the theme of today's kind of conversation, you can't sit there and just say, I believe in the mercy, I believe in manifestation and the abundance of God.
I mean, I'm very reluctant using affirmations.
Yeah.
I'm not discounting them completely, but what we do in SE is like we say, like Peter would do this. He would say to someone, I feel alive. And then the person will say it and they say, what's your response to it? Yeah. I'm not really interested in the statement. Are you open to that?
Yeah.
Or not? And we're interested in exploring. You can't force and induce, like, I feel alive. You want to be curious. What's your response to the affirmation?
That's right. Yeah. And it's like same with connection to one's body. There's so many somatic types of approaches where we're trying to really force connection to the body. Yeah. And what's more interesting is actually tracking the way the person connects to their body and disconnects. It's a meta perspective that allows them to see the whole pattern. And in understanding that pattern and seeing how they do that, gain agency. Yeah. Right? It's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, even
but like this positive psychology.
I will allow them to stay in cognition because it's their place of safety. And then I say, as you stay in cognition, what's that like for you? So you get them to touch into the experience of cognition.
Yeah.
Like for me to try to force them into their bodies is completely unethical and it won't work.
I agree.
Because their defense mechanisms will be so ready to combat anything.
Exactly.
So you can't force this. It's got to be a gentle, organic opening, almost that you're almost. It's an awareness of it in your field. It's not like bringing it into your field.
Mm. That's my problem with positive psychology as well. They're trying to get you to the happies and the opens and in some way it's like that. It's not therapy. That's not therapy. That's not good counseling. A lot of the coaching words like life coaching, health coaching,
a lot of the
personal development
coaching, and like I'm not bashing coaching because I think it has its place. But if you go into it, you've got to be aware of this. First of all, I say, don't go in there because you're trying to fast track.
Mm.
That's really important. You can't fast track like training in therapy. Mm-hmm. There's no haste in healing. Anyone that says that I can heal your problems in a weekend workshop, like Peter says, he says, run the other way, because this is a process.
Progress is process.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the next one is that you are not a basketball coach to these people. You'll traumatize them.
Mm.
Like coaching is designed for people who are elite. They're like CEOs.
Yeah.
You're people who are, really at the top of their field, and but most of the Muslim community, I'm overgeneralizing hugely here, but a lot of our Muslim community that you'll find when you're going to coaching, they've got huge trauma that they, and if you apply coaching techniques to traumatize people, you will re-traumatize them.
Absolutely.
And if you're in coaching, you need to have supervision and you need to have your own personal sessions.
I totally believe that. And honestly, I don't even feel that, anything can be classified as therapy if it's not really exploring these internal intrapsychic conflicts between agency, between one's needs, between one's boundary setting, between trusting people and trusting God, and this relationship with the self, this intrapsychic conflict. If that is not explored and reconciled in some way and brought back into some sort of adult, rational, embodied sense out of its kind of arrested state in childhood, you're not doing therapy. You're just kind of just playing with the wind, ruffling the leaves, maybe giving some positive encouragement, which is great. And we all kind of need that.
Yeah.
But that's not deep therapy.
Yeah.
It's not therapy.
So, I mean, bringing us back to this is that number one, I think when it comes to manifestation, the istikhara summarizes our relationship to the world around us.
No.
Is that we say, you know, I don't know, but you're still setting, you're saying, I'm going to go forward with this.
Yeah.
And show me the signs, not necessarily dreams. It can just be like advice from people. It could be circumstantial. It could be interactions.
Instinctual, just
That you
that
just
gut
say,
feeling.
draw me close. If it's good for me, then facilitate it. If it's bad for me, then turn me away from it. That's our manifestation.
Beautiful. Yeah,
You know, it's the
totally.
istikhara. Number two is understanding for me, I wanted to get in is the personal growth world is laced with a sort of American Protestant work ethic of that I can will myself to achieve things. And it's a reaction to, like, historically it's a reaction to Catholicism that became very fatalistic. It was if, like, we can't change our circumstances, we give over autonomy to the Pope and the authorities. And it was just this fatalism that you can see in Muslim communities, very much that fatalism. And so we can see Muslims, we are reacting to the certain sort of attitudes that we've seen in our previous generations, or maybe our parents, our grandparents, you know, subconsciously, I believe, by us getting involved in personal growth. And I'm not dismissing personal growth as a whole. It's got some beautiful things in it, and I've benefited immensely. But don't forget, like, that you've got to be aware of these things, is that ultimately it's a reaction towards that fatalism that manifests itself in I can will. Like, now the divine will's complete. Like, before, the fatalism is like the divine will's in control and I can do nothing. The other extreme of that is I can, you know, I can use my own willpower and will through. And often, and a metaphor I use for my clients is like say, for example, if I've got a client dealing with addiction, there's two approaches to addiction that I'm aware of. Number one, I can strategize and I can almost they can willpower through, where they're basically going cold turkey, and they're, you know, they're doing an exercise to control their desires and appetites. They're doing this, they're going on for their fasting, they're doing all these number of things. They're sort of strategizing, but and that has its place. But often what happens with that, what you're doing is you're using your willpower. And the analogy I give, it's like you're on the water, but you're rowing. And if you're constantly rowing, your arms are going to tire, and then you'll have to let go, and then you're taken by the tide. And that's what happens to people when they strategize with addiction, is that eventually when something hits them, they're broken and they just think they're back to square one. Whilst the other strategy, not strategy, the other approach is process oriented, is where, well, what's underlying the addiction?
Right.
Like, what's, you know, why are you like, what's your experience as you get triggered and you feel you have to turn to that, and then exploring, if we need to, the past of how you know, in terms of attachment to caregivers, in terms of how you used to regulate when you were a child. Did you have the support of the parents to help you regulate? You will find that there was something there where they felt left alone, and they almost had to grab onto anything, whether it be food. Usually it turns to food, chocolate or something like that, that then moves to computer and gaming, that then moves to pornography, that can move to hard drugs, and so forth and so forth. And that's much deeper. We're looking at the underlying reasons for this. And I say, often when we explore it on that level, you're not rowing, you've put your sail up and you're feeling the wind. So you've got momentum. You almost feel like, I'm not having to effort as much. Of course, you're using some element of willpower, which is what we call the sympathetic, where you're actually activated and you're doing, but it's a temporary thing. You apply a little bit of effort, but then you want to feel some wind in your sail as well. And I find that, you know, this whole willpower is like you're trying to row yourself out of your issues. And it fundamentally, it will leave people hopeless, I feel. And the personal growth world, so many people tell me in the personal growth world that a lot of these people who seem so positive, actually they're very depressed, and they're very you know, disturbed people in their personal lives. Because if you're trying to just willpower, you will have some reaction. There will be some counter reaction to that internally, where it can breed a sense of self-hatred and self-loathing, and just always expecting more from yourself. This, like, just always pushing yourself and having these unrealistic ideals that ends up you just be completely disassociating from your real needs emotionally.
Right. Totally. And putting pressure on other people
Yeah.
and being very rigid in the way that you interpret, your relationships and your lives, your life and the things that are going on therein. And it's a very rigidness. It's a type of one-track mind, it's a very narrowness. And, life is way more vast than that. And the more that we can open up to that and allow the life force to flow in, the more that we can be able to really feel into really what we want, which is connectedness, which is loving relationships, which is feeling authentic, feeling value, feeling our purpose, being able to share that, receive that, just being full human beings.
Yeah.
But the more that we kind of consolidate our defenses and really armor ourselves, become rigid and powering through or thinking through or spiritualizing through or doing one thing just through, anything like that is not going to be conducive at all.
It's non-relational.
Where are you trying to go?
You can feel it. The energy of it is almost, what it is like the metaphor I use is like our eyesight. You've got focused vision, and it's a focal vision. It's almost you're focusing in on something, which we need. Initially, we've got this ability. So pan out, which is the peripheral vision. What's going on in the environment, and then there's something I want. So you narrow in on it, and then you pan out again to see what's the relationship of that to the larger environment. So for us to have a true vision, it's almost focusing, panning out, focusing, panning out. So it's relational, because the panning out is relational. It's like, what impact does that have on the things around? And are the other things attuned to it and complying with it? Or do they need something else? And I find that this approach that you were talking about, the rigidity, it's almost as if it's just focal vision, which is going to leave you blindsided.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. It's very left brain, just very like tool focus based, and the right brain being that kind of expansiveness. And we need both hemispheres online. I mean, we have to be able to have both. You can see pretty well, you can see textures and you can see colors and stuff with just one eye, but the depth of perception and, the capacity to really relate to the things in the world comes from having both eyes together. And, there's something to that. We have
and not an either or. I mean, I found clients really find that useful, that phrase, using that terminology. It's never like when with this manifestation, it's speaking to something true, but it's a both and. It's like dismissing the relational piece, it's dismissing the peripheral. So it's a both and. It's not an either or.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
I think that sounds like a
good place to stop it there, inshallah. Okay, I hope that was useful for everybody. Inshallah ta'ala. If you like these questions, please feel free to send us more questions. We'll be doing these regularly, inshallah ta'ala. And we'll see you next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.